Welcome back, everyone. We have a very special guest back again, Noel from Malta. If you watched the last episode, you will know that he has covered a lot of ground already. Lots of nuggets are really interesting, particularly in terms of Islamic origins, but also just more widely in terms of the culture of Malta. So, welcome back, Noel. What have you got for us today?
Hello, Mel. Thank you for having me again. Today we're going to answer this question. Is Maltese a language or is it an Arabic dialect in itself? If you remember, we had these themes of what we are going to cover, and one of them was this Arabic, is Maltese an Arabic dialect or a Maltese language? And in order to answer this question, first we have to delve a little bit into knowing what is a language.
Mhm.
This is not helpful. This is maybe something that's already known with those that are knowledgeable in linguistics, but for the lay person like me, I think it's helpful to know a little bit of what is a language before trying to tackle this question, whether Maltese is an Arabic dialect or a Maltese language. So, what is a language? I found this definition in Wordnig very interesting. So, a language is a communication of thoughts and feelings through a system of arbitrary signals, such as voice, gestures, or written symbols. And the thing that we have to keep in mind here are two aspects: communication and arbitrary signals. Of course, we are dealing mostly with written symbols in this channel, but the thing that we have to always keep in mind is communication and arbitrary signals. However, among linguists, according to Owens, it's still a fuzzy concept. So if you want to drill down and exactly what is a language, there is still it's still a bit fuzzy. It's not really clear what is it exactly. Certainly, it's not intelligibility, because if you consider Swedish and Norwegian, they're mutually intelligible, but both are languages. Whereas if you think of the Chinese dialects, they are mutually unintelligible. However, they are not considered as languages, as separate languages, but as dialects of Chinese. So intelligibility is not a marker. It's better or more helpful to think of it as something that is associated with the concept of a nation. And for example, we have Maltese, the difference between Maltese and Nigerian Arabic. Both are cut off from Arabic. However, Nigerian Arabs, they identify as Arab, and therefore they think of their language as a dialect of Arabic. However, Maltese, no, they think of it as a language, or it's described as a language. And maybe it's helpful to think of what Max Weinreich has said, that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. So the conclusion, therefore, is that a language is not really, it's not a linguistic, it's something beyond linguistics to define it. And therefore, rather than thinking of language and dialect, there is kind of another thought which may be better or more helpful to think about standard and non-standard. So this is something that we have to keep in mind when we're talking about this something. What's the difference between language and dialect? They are quite similar, let's say. And there is another helpful definition of then what a dialect is. Because if we say, okay, so if a language is kind of the same as a dialect, just it has an army and a navy, but what is a dialect? And then a dialect is a form of a language that differs from the standard by a grammar, vocabulary, accent, or and it is associated with a particular region or social background. And we can think of these different systems of communication ultimately, because they are arbitrary signs of communication that slowly transform from one to another. Like when you have a rainbow, the colors, they slowly transform from one to the other, and you don't know exactly where is the red, where does the red stop and the orange start, or the yellow start. And this phenomena is called the dialect continuum or the dialect chain, where dialects that are closely together, they are intelligible, but those that are further apart, they are not intelligible. Or it's harder to understand with each other. Maybe it's a better way of explaining it. Then there is also the accent. So we saw that the dialect is differences in pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary, and accent is differences in pronunciation. This will be helpful later on when we'll talk about even the dialects in Malta, like the Maltese dialects themselves. So the Maltese, are they dialects or are they accents?
Yeah.
And even within a dialect or even within an accent as well, there is still, you can continue to have further taxonomy. You can further subdivide and subdivide until you arrive to the individual. So basically, it also you have like factors such as upbringing, regional backgrounds, age, personal preferences, and context. So at the end of the day, language is the sum at a community level of what each individual decides to utter. And this is also a further motivation for me to do this presentation because so that my compatriots, at least if they know the history, then their language will be more appreciated, and therefore it will help to the maintenance of the language. So everyone in the community has a part to play in this. Languages also evolve. Now, they evolve by either innovating within themselves or else because they are influenced by other languages. However, unlike in paleontology, the work of the historical linguistic is harder because different languages, even if a language, let's say, die, they can still influence other languages. Now, how do languages actually change through time? The range, which basically almost languages do not change, like Icelandic. Linear change, where a language moves from one state to another, for example, English. And then there is multilinear language, in which it changes differently across different speech communities. For example, Arabic, which has elements of, in some instances, it's doesn't change, it's static, and in others, it's changing. When linguists speak of language maintenance, it means that a language is retained in at least one aspect of life, whereas if it's a language shift, it means that the whole language is replaced by another in all areas of use. And when this shift occurs, it occurs first in the lexemes, so basically the words, and unless there are no replacements. For example, mostly in topology, flora and fauna. And this will also be helpful for us when we'll see the history, because if, for example, in Malta there is no Latin topology, then it probably means that there may have been a break. Whereas if all the topology is Arabic, then we can say, okay, the current population can date itself back to the Arab area. And then Versti continues with then morphosyntactic patterns, phonological, and finally the phonological features. There are incomplete languages shifts as well. For example, an example of a complete shift would be Coptic to Arabic, according to Versti. Then we have an adstratal language, which is an incomplete shift from one language to another. And basically, people are able to speak both languages. For example, Berber in North Africa, where they also are able to speak Arabic. Yes.
It's funny enough, I was just looking at some Berber today, It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of an interesting language. It's got a very distinctive script, and
Mm-hmm.
the words are very different to any other language. Like, for example, to say hello, you say Azul, and to say goodbye is Arufat. So it's not like anything in that I can tell. So it's quite incredible for a language to shift from that towards Arabic. So I think if I grasp it correctly, it
Mm-hmm.
starts with people changing their basic vocabulary, the nouns, they change that, and then gradually the grammar and other aspects of the language follow into the new
Okay.
language, like such as Arabic, or not maybe not
Exactly.
the new language, but the a different language, let's say.
Exactly. So you start with the lexemes and then you continue with morphosyntactic and then the phonological. And if you remember last week when we talked about between the difference between or the change from masjida to masjid, it was phonological, the argument that Al-Jallad makes. Mm, Now, as regards Arabic, most studies focus on the effects of the adstrated languages on Arabic, but few studies on the effect of the other way around, of Arabic on the adstrated languages. As we shall see in the next episode, for example, between Berber and Arabic, Berber and the Arabic of the Maghreb, and even on Maltese, there was an influence, and there is an example, interesting example of what Maltese can shed on the development of Berber itself. And as well, the last point is that the influence of Arabic was felt wherever Islam spread beyond the borders of the Arabic Empire. Now, finally, there is this aspect that usually native speakers, this is especially true to the Arabic world, maybe not so much to the Maltese, but in the rest of the Arabic world, this can be especially true that they have this idea that their spoken language is somehow a corrupt version of the Arabic, and therefore, especially when they write it, they try to correct their language, their dialect, to make it um, seem closer to the written Arabic. And this is another aspect that we have to keep in mind. So basically, in conclusion, what do we have? We have languages are constantly changing, sometimes imperceptibly and sometimes more rapidly. The difference can be blurred across space and time. They change either consciously or unconsciously ultimately because the individuals within them decide to do so. They agree, let's say, that we are not going to say something in a particular word, but in another word, whether they decide without an external influence, or sometimes because of external influence. And the change in the language is brought about by the difference in the geography, customs, religious beliefs, and contact. And the meaning, or else, if the meaning is not changed by the word itself may have its meaning changed by being more restricted or more broadened.
Yeah.
And also we have to
I,
keep in, sorry, yes.
yeah, I'm just going to comment that various studies have looked into the dynamics of how language changes from generation to generation, and
Mhm.
typically they found it occurred in childhood and in like teenagers and young children, and it's partially because they view language like any other aspect of life. It's open to play, so they play and innovate with words, and they develop new meanings to old words, or they invent new words, or they take on new words maybe from interactions with people from other uh languages. So there's lots of it's very difficult for adults to do that. It tends to be more something that occurs at a younger age, and so it's kind of for that reason it's kind of imperceptible, um maybe to adults, how these new innovations come in. They come in a little bit at a time, but if you have a large population, each person can bring about quite a difference, collectively and over a period of time. That's my take on it. But
Mhm. No, no, it can be like as you're saying, and I have never heard of this point, but I think it's very interesting. What I observe, uh, what I have observed myself as well, especially as someone that's interested in dictionaries and definitions, and also someone who attempted to make a dictionary as well, not make, but basically digitize. Um, Ultimately, I think the every generation needs a new dictionary, and when you think
yeah,
about it, because the generation gap now. What Marshall here is saying is that sometimes the if you make a dictionary every generation, sometimes there are few differences, sometimes no differences, and sometimes a lot of differences.
yeah,
And it's a bit discouraging to hear what you're saying, because if Maltese children are speaking in English, many of them, like 50%, 75%, it doesn't bode well
no,
for my language.
no,
No.
and maybe that's if Maltese is to be saved, that's where I suppose particularly parents need to be encouraging and maybe challenging negative views of the language.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's a bit more complicated than
hmm
this, because there are very practical reasons. Oh, the most obvious is the influx of foreigners.
yeah,
But I've been abroad as well, and it's not something impossible to have both languages, to appreciate both languages, and to. But this is anyway a topic for the last episode as well. I don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
be too stuck on this.
yeah, yeah.
And the last point that we have to keep in mind, therefore, that language is arbitrary science, a system of communication, and the difference between a dialect and a language is an army. One has an army, the other doesn't. Let's look at some examples of how this language can change. And I'll start with this one. I don't know if you remember when we met, I was telling you this word, the Makam Ibrahim, the standing prayer of Abraham. And I don't know, it was a total mess in my mind at that time. And kind of one of the problems was that I didn't have the good dictionary. Now I have an etymological dictionary of Aquilina, so I can make my thoughts a bit clearer. Now,
Wow. Yeah,
I'm going
can't
to
wait to hear
focus
what you
on
got.
the word im. Now, Makam Ibrahim, and I thought, okay, Makam, and with Maltese we have im, and the thought exactly came to this Hajar im. This is the second oldest building in the world, and it's called Hajar im, which means this is an extract from Wikipedia: standing or worshipping stones. Hajar, okay, they are stones, but im, are they standing? Are they worshipping? Are they both? And if we have the Makam, so what's the connection between them? The standing, so he's standing in prayer, and we have the same word for standing and for worshipping. But ultimately, is it really the same? Unfortunately, no, because if we look at the roots of both to worship and to stand, they are different. So to worship, it's kaf, alif, and mim. Sorry, I'll make the kaf, alif, and mim. Whereas to stand up, it's kaf, wow, and mim.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but the issue for me, it was a bit confusing, or I was like thinking maybe they are related or not, because in North African, sorry, this one, I got this all from the Dictionary of Aquilina. Because in North African, Andalusi Arabic, and in Syriac, now Aquilina writes Syriac, so I don't know if he means Syriac Arabic. I think he means Syrio-Aramaic,
Yeah.
Syriac. Right? This pattern changes to this, to kaf, yay and mim. So therefore im, and which seems similar to this. So this is just an example of sometimes you think that a pitfall, a linguistical pitfall that you can fall into.
And could it be that because these words with different etymologies sound the same, they get kind of treated like they
The
have the
same.
same shared meaning?
That was what I was getting confused about, like how they are the same or not the same, but the roots are not the same. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can can
Maybe because I didn't delve a lot into this, I searched from the dictionary, and this is the result. It's but maybe there is someone else who has further information and say like, oh no, wait, they are both the
can I
same. Hmm.
can I give an example from English that's similar to what you just explained?
Hmm.
You have the word bird, bird.
Yes,
Now, there in English, people often refer to women as a bird,
as
and
bird. Yes,
it's often mistaken as a negative thing. But if you go back to ancient English, I think it came through a Scandinavian word, if I'm not mistaken, which
ah,
which means lady. It's a completely different word to the
okay,
word for a flying creature. Two different words. It was spelt
yeah,
differently, but
yep,
because it sounds the same, it got associated,
yep.
and of course, there's a lot of positive associations with that. But it originally meant a lady,
Hmm.
and because it eventually, because a lot of people start to think that the etymology was the same as
Hmm.
the creature, which with wings, then it's actually the positive connotation turned into a more derogatory connotation. And that's
That
purely because of confusion about the origin of the word ultimately. So I
that's
just thought that I'd share that. It's kind of similar to the situation here with this one.
exactly that's the point that I was trying to make as well. So so here actually they have a mistake in the Wikipedia because these should not be worshipping stones. These should be just standing stones. Okay, even though
Yeah,
blah blah blah. But
yeah.
anyway, there is a
There's always room for correcting these sites.
yes, and let's see definitions that we see in our lifetime. For example, leg, Maltese it's رجل, and foot is سيء. However, now everyone says سيء for both the leg and the foot. But actually, it should be the leg shouldn't be سيء, but it should be رجل. The
Mm.
same for hands and arms. Like it should be eat and dreh. But now everyone just says eat, eid.
Can I jump in on this one?
Yep.
If we go back to the idea that I had that language innovations often happen among children,
Mm-hmm.
this is an innovation which simplifies things. If you
Mm-hmm.
imagine from a child's perspective, it's much easier just to refer, to have one word which refers to a limb, essentially, whether it be leg, foot. The distinction isn't clear to a child. So again, it could be um, due to that. Children tend to simplify what what might be a necessary distinction from an adult's point of view may not be very helpful from a
Or it
child's
could be
point of view.
that I mean there usually um, we use kind of our language. We don't really need to have this distinction between leg and foot
Yeah.
in everyday language. So
Hmm.
then they become merged. Well,
Yeah.
I don't really know because even when I was young, there was still this merge. And
Yeah.
actually later did I find out like, look, actually leg is not a C. Not everything is C.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So we go to another interesting for Maltese, especially word, which are carrots. Now in standard Maltese, we have two words, carrotti and sunnaria. This is a map that I've made by asking the people on. I, I went on various Maltese groups and asked them, "How do you say carrots in your dialect?" And this is the result. And there are quite interesting isoglosses. For example, here, tsinneria, tsinneria. In this area, they say carretti instead of carrotti. I
Yeah.
was actually surprised how few people say tsunnaria, because in my family we say tsunnaria, and most of the people they were saying just carrotti, except for the people in Randi and here in Audish. What is interesting as well is this word spunnaria and sfinnaria.
Yeah.
So let's focus first on tsunnaria, how this word came to be. So it came from Zanahoria, and Zanahoria came from Esfeneria. However, Sfinneria or Sfunnaria came directly from Esfeneria. Now, while I was asking the people how they say Tsunnaria in their dialect, uh, everyone kind of was curious about this word Sfinneria, and someone posted this etymology. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the post, so apologies to the person who wrote it. Um, this is another interesting case of what do you call tomatoes? Should we call them tadam or tufir? And this was especially interesting because I heard that farmers were were calling what in standard Maltese these are called tadam, but they were calling them tufir. And if you can see here, you can see like that there is tufir tadam, tadam, tufir. There's like a whole confusion here. Some are saying tufir, some are saying tadam. So what's going on exactly here? Let's look at standard Maltese. So that's tadam and tufir in dialects. And actually, these were the farmers that were saying this. So they were calling tomatoes tufir, right? Tufir. And this tufir, so apples, they were calling them tufir tabelludia. Belludia because at some point in time they were importing apples from Belludia, which is in a valley in Sicily. And another helpful post on Facebook basically explained that in the beginning we had tufir for apples. I think if I remember correctly, even in Arabic is the same tufir for apples. However, when tomatoes were discovered, they were called tufir tadam, Adam's apples. Gradually, tufir tadam became tufir tadam, and ultimately the word tufir was dropped and they were just called tadam.
Oh, that makes sense. Yes, I see. Can I make give you a parallel similar one from
Sure.
French?
Yep.
So you have pomme, which is a pomme, apple, and
Yep.
you have pomme de terre,
Mm-hmm.
which is a potato. So I can imagine how
Yep.
similar thing they had to come up with a word for these new vegetables called potatoes that came over from America. So they took a
Yep.
word, apple, called it apple of the land. Now, if it followed the same pattern as here, the potatoes could easily ended up being called simply ter, land. You know,
Yeah.
that's
Maybe.
just an idea. It's very
Yeah.
similar, actually. You know, it's funny
Mm-hmm.
how apples are used as the go-to when they're looking for a new word.
And this one, I managed to retrieve the comment. It's from Stefan Buhajar, who explains that basically how this transformation came to be from Tufihat Adam, because they thought that, he says that here, that the Spanish thought that they found heaven on earth, from where Adam and Eve were kicked out from heaven. So, and they found the earth. And this concept of actually, there is a parallel in Hungarian, because in Hungarian, the word for heaven and the word for tomato is the same, porodichom.
I think there's a pun with the word Adam in Hebrew as well. I
I don't
can't
know.
remember. I think uh, it's either the word human or Adam. It's got
Ah,
something some connection with
human,
the earth.
yes. Probably, yes, because in Maltese it's like that. Bin Adam, the son of Adam. We
Yeah,
saw it in the previous episode.
I
In
think.
Maltese it's Bni Adam, Bin Adam, the son of Adam.
Yeah, yeah. I have a funny feeling that Let me just look it up here while we're talking. I think um, in in uh, in in Hebrew, I think it means soil, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just check because that would be uh, yes, yeah. I just found it here. So
Adam
the
means
name derives.
uh-huh.
So the word Adam actually in Hebrew means soil. Oh, sorry, it's derived from the noun Adamah, which means soil or earth.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I
So
think it has nothing to do with Adma though. Adma means bone, but I think if we think of it from Arabic, actually, it would be more like you have to pronounce the Ain or the Rhin, and here it's just like no, it's nothing.
yeah.
It would be more like Ghadma, I think, something like that. But
I
no,
wonder
totally
did
not related.
I wonder did the person who gave it the name Tadim, might they have been familiar with Hebrew and chosen it knowing that it's connected to the idea Adamah, which
No,
means
I
soil
don't.
in Hebrew? Or is that stretching it a bit?
No, I think it's threatening. I think it's they're thinking about heaven.
Yeah.
They found heaven on earth. Adam was kicked out from heaven. There is the Adam's apple, and that's it. It literally means Adam's apple, and
Okay.
just like it. But this was just
Yeah.
like an example, not to go too much into the words and what they mean, just how words change, examples of how words change across time and or their definitions change across time. This is the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Now we go something a little bit closer to the interest of the audience. So I was listening to the Christian Prince. Sometimes I'm working and I leave him in the background, and he was talking about this, making this argument. His argument is that Allah cannot possibly be a proper name, and he derives this from Shur al-Fatiha, verse 1 and verse 2. And he says that actually Allah means the God and the God Lah, which is the Aramaic moon god. Now, I don't want to
Mhm.
go into the merits of whether Allah is the Aramaic moon god or not, because I know that Lloyd de Jong delved really deep into this and the connection and whether it's Allah or not and like this. I just want to just talk about the merits of his argument. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not the argument for Aramaic God coming from Allah, but I want just to talk about the merits of the argument. So let's
Yeah.
see what he's saying. He's saying, look, verse 1 and verse 2, they are Bismi Allah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. And here we have to focus on Allah and
Mhm.
Lillah.
Yeah.
As you see that Alif there disappears and becomes Kasra and Lillah.
Yeah.
In Arabic, the proper name doesn't change. It should stay the same. This is not, for example, a Slavic language where they change whether it's male or female. The name always stays the same. But
Yeah.
if you think that the proper name is Lah, then it makes sense here because it means the Lah and to Lah.
Yeah.
Now, so what do we have? We have the Arabic Allah coming from the Aramaic Allah, according to the Christian Prince. Do we have um, um, a comparison in Maltese? I had a better word in my mind, but it cannot come to me at the moment.
Parallel?
Parallel, exactly. Yeah. Do we have a parallel in Maltese? And yes, we do have a parallel in Maltese. So, water. Now, I took this information I attended a public lecture by Dr. Zamid. If I'm not citing one of his articles here, I'm citing them in other episodes. So what do we have? We have something as basic as water. In the Maltese, we call it ilma. And water in Arabic is called ma. So the water is al-ma, and water in Maltese is ilma. Ilma.
Mm.
And if we want to then say, how do you say the water in Maltese, then we just add another al. So lilma.
Nice. Yeah. 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 That makes
Now,
sense.
what is interesting is that this pattern, it doesn't, we don't see it in boiling water. So in Arabic, boiling water is called mashoon, but in Maltese we don't say il-mashoon, we say mishoon. And if we want to say the article, it's il-mishoon. So from a linguistic point of view, the Christian Prince's argument makes sense. Now, I don't know the other merits, but from this point of view, it makes sense because there is a parallel in Maltese.
Beyond beyond the linguistics, I suppose the potential weak point about his argument is actually when Allah became sort of established as a name for a god as opposed to or name for
Or what does lah mean for?
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's possible that by the time of the 7th century they've long forgotten about la, and it's got nothing to do with la at that stage. It's just used in a different way. Yeah, like
Mm.
in Aramaic they have Allah for God. So
That this article that's changing, that is from one let's say from one language to the other or one dialect to the other, how the article can be um, added to the, in this case, noun. I don't know, maybe in Aramaic, um, they don't have this this rule that the name doesn't change. I don't know Aramaic, so I don't
mm.
even, it can be as well. The speakers, they can, the audience, maybe they can comment.
I wonder, did Christian Prince mean last the two separate words as being from more primitive Arabic, or did he mean it to come from Aramaic the way you have it there?
No, no, he said it from the Aramaic. Unfortunately, this
Ah,
particular
okay.
video, he deleted it, but these are his notations when he was debating with a
Yeah.
Muslim.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, to this guy, if you look at it from a purely Arabic point of view, eh, this makes sense,
Yeah.
from a
No, I
purely
do remember.
Arabic point of view.
Yeah, I do remember seeing him make this argument several times. Yeah.
It's an interesting parallel.
Mm.
This is the point. Okay, so now we go into a little bit more of Maltese, like more examples which are interested, mostly to those that are interested in Maltese. In Maltese, for example, we have Dorna Daura Nobis, and this guy here, Daniel Grek, is asking, so from where does this name Nobis originate? And actually, Nobis, Francis Cassar here is very helpful, and he said like it comes from Ora pro nobis. That means pray for us. So Dorna Daura Nobis, or you can say it for other things, like when you thought that. In this case, Dornadaura means you thought that you were going into one way, in a way, but actually you had to go such a long way, my God, and you add nobis in the end. So
It's straight from Latin, isn't it?
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
And at the
Or
same
no?
time, he also continues with this word, busillis, and actually it means from India busillis in those words. And busillis, we kind of use it in that same context and say like you thought that you are going to do something which is easy, but then it's like Jaya bil busillis kind of, it's like it's taking me more time than I should have, and it's coming from the Latin, actually from the Gospel, from India Busillis in those days. And this is
Right.
another. These
Okay.
are other example of how much words can change from one language to another.
Yeah.
So, how do modern Maltese interpret words from other languages when they don't know those languages? When they know only Maltese? For
Yeah.
example, this is a very famous example, Jigjifogu, which means scattering wheels, and it comes from Latin, gioco del fuoco, which is a literally means fireworks.
You sure that's Latin or is it
No, no,
Italian you
that's
meant to say?
Italian. What did I say?
Yeah.
Latin? No, no, it's Italian.
Latin. Yeah.
Italian.
Italian. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Italian. Gioco del fuoco.
Yeah.
Roundabout. how roundabout, um, how does it seem, or how does a Maltese only speaker hear roundabout? Randaban, fire engines, fire rangers. This one actually I heard it in a folk song.
Yeah.
Peugeot is very famous. Bujun, Bujun.
Yeah.
Liquid membrane. Now this was quite recently, and I was talking with this guy, and he was telling me wiki membrane. And at first I thought he was speaking about maybe wikis. I don't know, but I thought that he is not very computer literate, so I don't think he's speaking about wikis. And
Yeah.
actually later I realized that it was actually liquid membrane. And to
Yeah.
to this person, to his ears it sounded wiki membrane.
Yeah.
So now here we're looking about the assault of the English language on the Maltese language. For example, jor, many people are now saying timuvia from moving, right? Abbel, a lot are saying to compara. Now, to compara can be also from Italian, comparare, but um, but I always knew it as abbel, but recently I'm hearing a lot to compara. Richiesta, for example. Now, this word is used a lot by lawyers as well. And lawyers in Malta, they, not only lawyers, but especially lawyers, they have this tendency of Italianizing words, even if we have a Maltese one. In Maltese, a request is talba. Now, they may say, because talba is not precise enough, because it can be in prayer. But the definition is also a request. And unfortunately, sometimes you will receive maybe um, letters from the government and like this, and instead of saying talba, they say richiesta. Tibbekia. Now, this is something that you hear on TV. No, it's not tibbekia, but tahmi. This one I heard that I was in the hospital and like I was like going and the I remember the nurse was saying to breastfeed, yeah, to breastfeed, but no, Maltese we have this one, tredda. It's not something only in Maltese, it's also in Italian. For example, instead of fermare on the radio stations, they were saying stoppare. Let's, after we've done like a long trip, Dorna Daura Nobis, let's see, try to answer this. Is Maltese at the end of the day a language or is it an Arabic dialect? If we look through the history of Malta, we see that for in the 15th century, it was you had like 43% of the sources they were mentioning that's Maltese or Gozitan. You've got 14%, not because there were a lot, but maybe we had like maybe 10 sources, and of these, if you make them into percentages, you've got 14% that said Gozitan is an Arabic dialect, Saracen, Arabic Saracen, or Arabic. So by the 15th century, you've got more than half that they considered Maltese as Arabic. 16th century, you've got a little bit more diversity. Some are saying Arabic, Moor, Saracen, African. Don't know, maybe Arab, maybe Moor. Some are saying like, no, this is something Maltese. We've got 20% that are saying, no, this is actually Phoenician or Carthaginian. In the 17th century, we've got even more diversity. Like, it's some form of corrupted Arabic. It's something derived from Arabic, Arabic itself, African, Phoenician, Berber, Afro-Arabic, Saracen, Moor. And in the 18th century, we still have quite a bit of difference, but mostly still Arabic, right? But still, some are saying Arabic from Punic, Phoenician, Afro-Berber. So this is what how Maltese was described by either the Maltese or foreigners. Now, if we talk about Arabic dialects, we see that all Arabs speak a local vernacular form. So if it was not for classical Arabic, they would each think that they have their own language. That their own Arabic dialect is not really a dialect, but it's a language. And the Arab dialects of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan are the Arabic dialects that have strayed most from the original structures. And I think here I'm interpreting that the original structure probably means classical Arabic. So Maltese is one of the peripheral dialects of Arabic, as we saw in the previous episode. And according to Borg, since peripheral languages are cut off from the Sprachraum, therefore they have to be considered as and they are autonomous linguistic systems. Therefore, it's better if they are considered as languages in their own right rather than relics of Arabic. If we go back to Maltese, therefore keeping this what Borch has said, Arabic is the closest relative to Maltese. It is the parent language of Maltese, not very influenced by Classical and Middle Arabic. The relationship is similar to between Yiddish and German in that we're saying phonetics and different, they differ, yes, from the parent language in script, culture, and religion, and fully independent language, according to Zaborski. And therefore, because of political and cultural reasons, as we briefly described in the previous episode, make Maltese try to distance themselves from the Arabs. And we have therefore to keep in mind always when we're talking dialect or language, do we have an army or not? And therefore, the Maltese, they try to classify Maltese as a mixed language, or they try maybe to think, no, it's not with the Arabs, but maybe there is a link with Phoenicians, or maybe other Semitic peoples, for example, Hebrew. Sociolinguistically is different from the other Arabic dialects, according to Feldman, because it's written in the Latin script, not in a diglossal relationship with classical Koranic Arabic, difference in religion, different in identity. Now, I find this article by Thompson, or essay actually, rather than an article, and Thompson says, well, concludes that Maltese derives from a variety of Siculo-Arabic and is still mutually intelligible with other Arabic dialects to this day, and therefore it is a dialect of Arabic. But at the same time, it's also say that since Maltese think that it's a language, and since the nation is divorced from the Arabic world, then the conclusion is that Maltese is not a dialect of Arabic. And I don't know, to me it seems a bit contradictory. What is it? Is it a dialect or is it not a dialect? And I'm thinking, I don't know, this is my opinion. Maybe there is some postmodernist thought going on here. I define by what I am. And as a Maltese, I can say that I I am what I am, not what I think I am in reality, no. It has to be acknowledged that there is a lot of ignorance among Maltese of how close Arabic and Maltese truly are, as well as also I must say that there is also a lot of it's not very well known that there is a sizable also Christian population in the Arabic world. This one I already said it. I'm not defined by what I don't. I think that I am. I am not defined by what I am, but what I really am. And therefore, if the linguists say that Maltese is a dialect, Arabic, uh, the people can feel whatever they want, when they should update themselves according to what the linguists say. Now, I'm going to maybe what Thompson wanted to say was what Owens says here, and I really like this scholar Owens. When I read his articles, they are really interesting and very concise, even if they are long, but still to the point and it's very clear as well. And I really like what he usually has to say. So he says that whether this question, what is Maltese, is it a language or a dialect? It's an interesting question to the Arabists themselves because inevitably it will lead to the question of what Arabic is. And what Arabic is, we will answer it in the next episode. As we already said, it's an ongoing debate and highly politically charged. To the Arabist, there is no. The answer is clear that Maltese is a dialect of Arabic because the closest sisters are other Arabic dialects. Maybe Maltese is both a variety of Arabic and is Maltese, a separate entity. Maybe it's both at the same time. Although some insist that it's only Maltese, but it's definitely not a mixed language. So if we remember that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy, Maltese then is a language. And the language is what maybe this is what Thompson actually wanted to say, that a language is what people define it to be. And if a people has the legitimacy, political legitimacy to do so, then they can define whatever they want. And then he comes with this, maybe Maltese is a dialect of Arabic and a language at the same time. Here we're going into more details that we already saw before, that Maltese is a variety of Arabic. And therefore, the conclusion is that Maltese is an Arabic language. That's all from what I have today.
Excellent. So I was actually curious to know which side you'd come down on that. I thought that the debate about whether it was a language or a dialect was, to me, sounded very similar to the idea of whether Pluto was a planet or a dwarf planet. And it's kind of like you got a spectrum, and it becomes subjective in terms of where do you draw the line, in terms of that spectrum. And I suppose it's it's a difficult one, but I suppose when there's substantial difficulty in communicating across dialects, I think then you have to really talk about a separate language because, as you mentioned, um, I think was it 30% or 40% of
Hmm.
simple things that you might want to say could be understood by someone in, say, North Africa or Iraq or Syria.
But as we already saw in the today, intelligibility is not a marker of language or not. So maybe it's not helpful to think about language and dialect and just think about dialects. Like we are speaking a dialect because also we um, in these so forms different forms of language of because we have to go as well of what is a language, the
Yeah.
definition, and it is a system of
Well,
arbitrary signs.
yeah,
And so
well,
we're speaking sorry, we're speaking like different systems, which maybe they are similar or not. And this one is better to think about the dialects. And some of these dialects then are raised to a standard. So standard and non-standard. People are
yeah,
usually talking about like mostly non-standard, heavily influenced by a standard,
yeah,
but kind of at some point one of the standards is elevated.
yeah. I would think though, in terms of the intelligibility,
Hmm.
uh, it can be an indicator of significant difference to the point where you've got a different grammar, you got a different set of vocabulary, a sufficiently different structure to the language. Okay, it makes it two speakers become unintelligible to each other, but that in itself is just a sign of that's not the end of it. It's actually a sign that there's sufficient difference to
Hmm.
view it as a different language. I'll just give you
Ah.
an
Mm.
example. You could
Hmm.
have a Scottish person with a really heavy accent with localized words that could be totally unintelligible to someone, say, from the south of England. Would you still agree that they're both speaking English? So it's it's a difficult one. I think it it's got to do with a substantial structural change in terms of grammar, and a sufficiently different vocabulary, or even it can be a combination of the spelling and the pronunciation of the words is sufficiently different to be distinctive. Like there is a lot of similarity between Aramaic and Arabic, um, and such that it is potentially possible to communicate across those two languages, or at some extent. Similar with Hebrew and Arabic and Hebrew and Aramaic, and yet there's no dispute about them being distinct languages. But
Because they are
yeah,
two nations. And I think this is also an important thing to keep in mind, nationhood.
yeah,
So so I think when you have a language, let's say to keep it simple, and you ask, is this a language or a dialect? The first thing that you are asking is, from what point of view are you asking? Are you asking
mm,
from a political point of view or from a linguistic point of view?
yeah,
Because you would have different answers, I guess. For
yeah,
example, the cases in Maltese, if you're seeing it from a political point of view, then it's a
yeah,
language. Because we are a nation, we certainly don't identify with Arabs. But from a linguistic point of view, it's a dialect of Arab. And
yeah,
if you go to use Maltese, I mean, you can use Maltese to communicate with Arabs.
yeah.
So,
Give you give,
mhm,
I'll just give it just another example
yeah,
that actually fits with what you're saying. If you go to I think it's pronounced Brno in the Czech Republic,
yeah,
yeah, and you ask them what language is this, they would say Czech, and
hmm
then you go, I don't know, to Bratislava in Slovakia, and you say, what language is this? And they say Slovakian. But actually, essentially, if you were to look at the language, listen to it, it's practically indistinguishable. Yet,
hmm
to the outsider looking in, you could actually get by with a basic. If you got a basic grounding in one, you pretty much could use it in the other. It's mutually intelligible, very similar. I think you'd be nearly hard pressed to say what's different.
hmm
Um, so yeah, I
yeah.
think it does support. I think that example supports the point that it is got to do with nationhood and the sense of identity.
hmm In the next episode now, since this question is of interest, I thought that it was a nice segue to go from is this an Arabic language? Then what is Arabic? And that's what we will explore in the next episode. What is Arabic? I have some very interesting information on Arabic, the development of Arabic, how Maltese plays into the contribution of Maltese to our understanding of the development of Arabic, not only Maltese but Maltese and the Maghrebian dialects, for example. Um, and later also we'll see the what other languages as well influence Maltese. We talked about Berber, we see Hebrew, and also a little bit about the Romance languages as well.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear what you've got for us in episode 3. So Noel, thanks very much again for coming along. It's been another very interesting presentation, and it's certainly going to lead us all to rethink our understanding of dialect and language. So thanks a million for dropping by.
Thank you. Thank you.